News ministry leaders and future ministers. I'm Saehee and this is Crystal, and we're so excited you're joining us today.
Our podcast is designed to offer tangible leadership competencies that you can apply directly to your ministry context.
That's right. So today in our Grow Together segment, we're going to talk about cultural analysis and social justice.
Very important issue.
Yes, these are the two sides of a one coin, and they go hand in hand very well together. So, but why does this matter, right? That's a big question. Mm-hmm. So it matters because we live in the generation where people from diverse backgrounds, cultures, histories, and traditions come and we rub shoulders against each other, right? So this cultural analysis helps us better understand each other and then lead this ministry better and healthier.
This doesn't mean you have to agree with everyone's opinions or their lifestyle, but it really is a form of spiritual discipline. By studying the community where God placed you to serve, it's also about a loving gesture that says, I want to get to know you and understand your worldview better.
That's so good.
Yeah, it's about being a listener, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Yes, that will be very, very important. This unbiased cultural analysis actually directly impacts the various social justice issues, right? Because you're understanding, you're listening to people. But in the early 19th century, during this industrial revolutions, the social justice was more about this wealth and property distribution. But today it's more about this equality issues, right? With gender and racial equality and all of the other issues that directly impacts our lives today.
So what do you think, Saehee, in your great wealth of experience, how would you approach cultural analysis and social justice?
Yes, a very, very many multifaceted approach.
But we only have a few minutes. So.
Right. But the number one, I think the first one that we really want to study is studying your city, your local context, to get a pulse of the local narrative. What are they talking about? What are they passionate about? What do they dislike, right? Identify social injustices by doing so. So one of the ways where you can do it is just studying the history and the demographics. So where this city come from, like I live in Springfield, Missouri, and we did the study and found out that there was a lynching that took place in downtown, in which segregated and black and white population even more. We're slowly building back that up. So because of that narrative, we understand, okay, there is some social injustice that took place. We need some homework to do. And demographics, who are the new people, new faces of the people? We have lots of people from diverse backgrounds coming because of education. We have Saudi people, we have Asians, we have Latinos. So who are those people? Even refugees that are coming.
And it's interesting you said that, Saehee, because even in our city of Springfield, that's primarily Caucasian, our universities here are filled with international students. And then I do think about the refugees that are in our community and how many opportunities we have to reach out to them. But they can be hidden if you don't do a cultural analysis.
Absolutely, and it helps us identify those social injustices and become part of the solution. And also pay attention to the local events, right? Some of the festivals that they're doing, events, because it helps you analyze what is your city really about? What do they like or dislike? And this is a little tidbit that I would like to give you as a police chaplain. If you really would like to get a cultural analysis of the story that you don't see day to day, do a ride-along with a police officer. You will see the world that you never knew it existed. And that helps you understand, wow, this is my city, this is where I live, this is my neighbor. So that actually helps you do better as ministers, right?
All right, Saehee, sign me up.
All right, next week.
Next week I'll be on. And I really do love, as Saehee does, as you do these cultural analysis, you step into that authority of not just a pastoring your congregation, but really pastoring your city.
You know what, that reminds me, just recently we hosted a first citywide Culture Fest. We talked about how Springfield is very not diverse, right? 92% Caucasian. But we hosted it expecting a few hundred people. We had over 3,000. What does it tell me? It tells me that our city is interested in this. It tells me that we hit the right button and we started a conversation. So pay attention to the cultural narratives, pay attention, study your city like you're studying your congregation, then you can tailor your ministry accordingly.
Secondly, and we've talked a little bit about this, but we need to engage the conversation toward actually solving the problems.
Yes.
So is there a poverty issue in your city? And answer probably is yes.
Yes.
And who's doing the work to bridge the gap between your communities of poverty?
And you don't have to reinvent the wheels. If somebody's doing well, just join the conversation, join the work.
And then also, is there an influx of immigrants, refugees, internationals who's passionate about bringing unity in diversity?
Yes.
And I mentioned this earlier, but I'm passionate about those international students that are often hidden on university students and come to America, never make an American friend or are in an American home.
That is
and so
really heartbreaking.
we need to actually walk toward just from the noticing to the actual problem solving. How can I become a host family?
Exactly.
How can I get in the lives of our refugee, immigrant, and international communities?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let me tell you this, it's easy to talk about unity in ethnic diversity and reaching all people and learning about the social issues. It's easy to talk about it. It's another thing to actually do it. So we're encouraging you to get into the conversation from reflecting to doing.
Right. That's right. You got to take some steps.
Yes.
And lastly, is there a growing LGBTQ community where you live? You need to learn about them. You need to find are there pockets so that we can better serve and contextualize the gospel to this specific demographic.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not saying affirm their lifestyles, right? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about learn about who they are because they're in our community. They're one of those people that God has placed in your life, in your sphere of influence to reach them. So don't disassociate yourself because of lack of fear or out of fear or whatnot.
So we become the listener and learner instead of just the benefactor.
We can also do that through cultivating an ongoing action reflection process in your own life. Now, this is a difficult one because this calls for observing your own biases, right? Biases against the issue of race, gender, culture, and privilege. You have to do this not only one time. This is not a one-time assessment and done and get an A+ and be good with it.
Right.
No, this is an ongoing process of action and reflection. So never stop learning. Never stop listening, right? And keep on collaborating and being part of the conversation.
Yes. And I found one way to do that in my own life is to make sure my leadership teams are diverse. When we see somebody with leadership capacities from a different, diverse background, really work to pull them up because I find myself seeing those blind spots, my biases more if I'm working in an environment where I'm loving and working alongside people from diverse ethnic backgrounds, gender backgrounds, age backgrounds. And so you almost have to really love it and make it a priority in your life so that those biases will start to dissipate in your life.
That's right. This call to ministry is all about making disciples, right? Making disciples of all nations and all people through all social strata. So how do we do that? How do we even know their needs, know their pains, understand where they're coming from? We have to do it through cultural analysis very intentionally. And knowing fully well this cultural analysis engages non-Christian engagement as well. So that's part of the journey. Part of our calling is that. So we have to pursue it.
I recently heard we're not really put here to maintain an aquarium. We're here to make fishers of men. So cultural analysis is really a part of that. We are going out to make fishers of men.
And when we hear this term social justice, we may this image pops up with people picketing and just the protesting. That's not the social justice we're talking about. We're talking about being light in the community, being sent into the community. Let me tell you, Crystal, as a pastor and as an ethnic pastor, I have built this burden and passion to go into the community. And here's something that you might appreciate understanding. A lot of the ethnic community, and especially ministers, our worldview is that our calling is to minister to our congregation. And that is culturally conditioned too. And so anything outside the church ministry, they don't see that. Oftentimes we don't see that as an extended ministry. In fact, maybe the more important part of the ministry is going into the world where you can actually live out this cultural analysis and social justice. So let me just encourage you. We're called to serve and act on behalf of Jesus, both inside the church, outside the church. If you're not outside the church, you cannot have that perspective or cultural analysis or even know what to do for social justice.
Saehee, when I talk to my Chi Alpha students, I also, because our largest cultural demographic is international students on campus, and oftentimes your students will see one person in their Chi Alpha group that loves the nations. And they kind of relegate this concept of cultural analysis to that one person that just has some crazy love for the people of the world. And I always say, you know what, the Great Commission is not for that one person that has some kind of crazy love. It is for all of us. And this concept of reaching the nations in our community and the world can't just be relegated to the one person that somehow likes it. And so pushing people to do cultural analysis and engaging this is really one of the fundamental aspects of the Great Commission of making disciples of all nations, which is our kingdom responsibility.
And you can do this alone, so invite other people into the conversations with diverse perspectives. Invite yourself, put yourself out there and hear and listen and learn. All right, so here's one of our best parts, right? One of the favorite parts of our podcast is answering your question. So today we have a question of, what is your favorite book that you couldn't do without? And for those just starting ministry.
So mine right now is Catch the Wind of the Spirit by Carolyn Tennant. And as I'm really embracing this pastoral mindset and even cultural analysis, there's a cultural analysis over what are the gifts of the Spirit or the Ephesian office gifts that people are bringing into the church. And Carolyn just does a fantastic job of unpacking that.
That's great.
And so anyway, I really appreciate her book, and right now I couldn't do without it.
That's great. And here's my favorite book, or at least for now, I love it because it just came off the press, 2019. It's called Developing Female Leaders. Isn't that appropriate for this podcast, right? And it's by Katie Cole. I love it. I love it. And it's actually very research-oriented. So for those of you who love numbers, this will help you. But also it gives you practical application from both men and women's perspective. You know, there are so many books out there talking about developing women, but it's only from women's perspective. Let me tell you, you're preaching to the choir. But if you have this diverse perspectives, they're really talking and capturing the stories of men who do well, man, it's transformative. So I recommend that wholeheartedly. Well, good. It's been a great conversation. I hope that our conversation encourages you to live up to the expectation that God set out for each one of us, so we can do ministry very well for His glory. Thank you for joining us, and keep on following us on Facebook and Instagram at AG Women Ministers. And until every woman fulfills her ministry calling, just remember, we're in this together.